In order, welcome to everyone. Thursday, August 26th already, 2 o'clock, shortly after. First item on the agenda is approval of our agenda. Has everyone looked at it? Do we need to add anything or does it look okay? I would look for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Duncan and Dominique. Thank you. Please call the vote. Catherine?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Councillor Giguere.
Yes.
Councillor McPhail.
Yes.
Mike Andrews.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
4-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Next item is adopting our minutes from July the 22nd. I hope everyone's had a chance to take a look at them. Are there any errors or omissions? If not, mover and seconder, please, to approve them. Moved by Mike, second by Dominique. Please call the vote.
Councillor Giguere.
Yes.
Councillor McPhail.
Yes.
Mike Andrews.
Yes.
Warden Marks.
Yes.
4-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. I remind everyone of disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Looks like we have none, so noted. Item 4, IBI engagement, report delivery, Director of ITS. Jeff, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just want to take this opportunity to frame the presentation that IBI Group will be presenting in a moment. I just want to ensure that all committee members understand what to expect from today's meeting and what not to expect. Deliverables laid out in the RFP and subsequent proposal by IBI was to provide us with 3 reports. Report 1 delivered to committee for the June 17th meeting included data gathering from multiple sources, included ISED, R2B2, project out of University of Guelph, and the initial survey data. A second report was provided for the July 29th committee meeting. This is not to be considered as report number 2. It was a continuation of the data gathering and validation exercise and can be considered as report 1A. And it included more confirmation of data through discussion with ISPs and committee members and some improvement on the data. Report 2, which is what's being delivered today, is going to provide detailed analysis of the data, and it also outlines recommendations for technical and financing options. Report 3 will be the final report, and it will be developed through analyzing of report 2, aligning with the survey data, and determining desired direction from this committee and understanding the will of council. So what can we expect from today's report? They're going to provide a detailed analysis of served and unserved premises and road segments. They're also going to provide technical options ranging from a full fiber to the home deployment, as well as a fiber to fixed wireless solution. These will also include cost estimates. We'll also be presented with governance and funding options, including what is available and what are the benefits and risks of each model. What not to expect from this report. This report will not provide us with a detailed plan to reach our goal. Developing this plan will be an iterative process, and it will take the committee and staff several meetings to work through the details and develop a solid plan forward. This report, along with survey data, will provide us with the information required to make decisions to reach our objectives, keeping in mind short-term and long-term goals, as well as aligning with direction from council. So I encourage everyone through the presentation to keep in mind that what is being presented are options, and we as a committee will need to decide what technical and financing options we want to pursue to meet those goals of the committee and the expectations of our residents. Any questions before I hand it off to IBI?
Questions for Jeff, comments? No, it doesn't look like it.
So what's next one?
IBI, I'm not sure who's taking the lead, but welcome, and certainly the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll take the lead. My name is Keith Ponton. I'll introduce my colleague, John George, who is also joined this meeting. We're happy to walk you through the options analysis as in this PowerPoint format and as an overview of the report contents. So we'll jump right into this and proceed with the presentation. If we could move to the next slide, please. So as Jeff had indicated, our topics for discussion today are a review of the technical options that have been developed, as well as the governance and funding options. And our intent here is to provide an options analysis and discuss the framework to develop recommendations, working with both administration and this committee as we track towards developing and finalizing this report. Jumping right into the technical options is next. For context, I think Jeff has said it well, and this material is the intent is to be used to inform the final report. As we just so we're all on the same page in terms of conceptual level planning and cost estimation, this is the work done here represents an approximate magnitude of cost based on requirements derived primarily from unit costs that we've validated with local and regional data used to obtain approval in principle and for discussion purposes. So this is these are high-level conceptual cost estimates that we'll be running through. Next slide, please. So just to recap, we've progressed through completing the assessment of served versus underserved at the county and municipality level. We further worked with Mr. Andrews to provide some validation of areas that we were a bit uncertain on, or we had conflicting data with respect to served versus underserved. The net result of that exercise has been a slight increase in served premises or road kilometers, depending on how we want to measure that. And any areas tagged as requiring further investigation are assumed as underserved for the options analysis and planning purposes. Next slide, please. So getting us back to numbers that have been adjusted slightly since we last brought them forward, but the net result is pretty much the same. Where we have a situation where on a premise count basis, we find approximately 60% of county premises are served, but measured in terms of road segments, and especially focusing on the less urban and more rural areas, there's certainly a disparity in terms of 76% of county road segments with premises are in the underserved category. So we've explored a couple of options, and really what the options presented here represent the ends of a spectrum in terms of the ability to provide improved broadband services to on a county-wide basis to all areas that are identified as underserved. The first approach, which is admittedly likely a longer-term vision, is a vision and an approach that would have a fiber backbone to all underserved roads and premises within the county. So that backbone would be connected, drops would be connected to that backbone to connect each underserved premises. We've done the costing on that on a unit cost basis using cost averages that we are seeing for similar projects in similar geographies. and really represents, I'll say, likely the longer term vision that many would have in terms of providing the best broadband capacity to the county and to the municipalities, as well as having the longest useful life. Of course, this is the highest cost option, and usually with this approach, there is certainly a degree of sticker shock. These are not small numbers. One of the metrics that is often used to help think about, to put these numbers in context, are the capital cost per premise. So as you can appreciate, the more premises that we envision connecting, and ideally every premise, we think in the long-term view, likely would want to connect to this type of solution. But we've run the numbers at various different what we call take rates of premises connected to give us a view of both cost and cost per prem. So at one extreme here, we see about $15,000 per prem as a view of what that means to the individual homeowner or property owner within the county. I would suggest, I'll just pause for 1 second on that option and suggest that many municipalities and public sector organizations start with that vision, often realizing that it may take many years or in fact decades to achieve that. So, spreading out the spend over a number of years, or looking for financial assistance in forms of grant from other levels of government or private investors, is often the way to finance those sorts of large scale investments in fiber optic infrastructure. Perhaps I'll pause. I know we'll have time for questions at the end, but I want to make sure that that approach is understood before we move on to explain the second technical option here.
Do we have any comments or questions for Keith? They look satisfied, Keith.
Okay, I'll keep moving forward. The second option that we explored is an option that represents, it's certainly a less expensive option. It's an option that we've explored with the strategy of deploying a fiber backbone to connect what we understand and identified as high value tower locations. And I'm going to call on my colleague John to further talk us through this option.
Sure.
But at the highest level, and John, I'll let you sort of explain the approach here and talk about the connectivity and approach to developing costs for this option.
Sure. So the premise of this option is to identify towers dispersed throughout the county or across the entire county that would provide radio coverage to the majority of the county. And in fact, what we've been able to do is identify some locations where we can get radio coverage across the entire county so that we can serve all of the underserved areas and even some of the served areas as well. The towers were pulled from a list of towers in the federal government database, and these towers are primarily represented by or owned by the major carriers. There were quite a number of towers that were available across your county, and we looked at some that already had fixed wireless infrastructure on them from some of the service providers, but felt better to select alternate towers so that we're not simply duplicating the coverage that other service providers are achieving across the county. And if you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a list of the towers, and the concept is to put radio equipment on each of those towers and connect those towers back to served areas with fiber optic cable. While we're putting fiber optic cable, backbone cable in the ground to serve the towers, the other concept is that any households or any premises along those fiber paths would be served by the fiber rather than by wireless. So this becomes somewhat of a hybrid where along the fiber path to the towers, we pick up premises on fiber, and any other premises in the unserved areas will be picked up via wireless. So we identified 12 existing towers and provided some coverage maps on that, and found a hole in the coverage across the county. So we can supplement that by putting a 13th tower into the Belmont area. And I think you'll find that the next slide should provide you, I believe, with a coverage map showing the coverage or expected coverage from each of these towers right across the county. So we used a tool called RF Mobile. That's an online tool for modeling radio propagation or signal propagation. And we took a conservative approach of using a higher frequency at 5.8 gigahertz. And of course, higher frequencies get shorter distances or achieve shorter distances from the towers. We also assumed that at every premises that wanted to connect into this system, they would have to mount a small subscriber radio at their premise, and we assumed a height of 5 meters to model rooftop type antennas. So as you can see, and as said, we've looks like we can achieve full coverage of the county by mounting radio equipment on 13 towers across the county. Now the next slide should talk to some of the financials. And the first thing you'll notice is that the numbers on the wireless option are considerably lower than the numbers on the all fiber option. So the same costs on the that we used on the fiber for any of the backbone service and the towers at $60 a meter, and we used $1,000 for a premise. The radio tower costs for the radio equipment, we estimated $5,000 for each tower for equipment and $500 for each household for radio equipment. Any tower co-location or lease fees would be, applicable. So we'd have to add that in. We've also looked at this from a take rate perspective. You will notice the 13th tower in the Belmont area is shown as at a cost of $255,000. So that's an estimate of building an entire tower. So where the other towers were leveraging existing infrastructure. If you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide, please. Thank you. So when we sum up the costs of this option, of the wireless option, we're looking at based on the take rate ranging from 3.7 million upwards to about 7 million, a little over 7 million. Provide connectivity. Now, the pros of this approach are rapid deployment, flexibility to redeploy radios on other radio sites should you decide to move or add or subtract radios, and then fiber backbone can be expanded beyond the tower locations at a later time to pick up others should you prefer. And the cons, though, are that we end up with lower capacity and less future proofing. So radio technology is somewhat rigid, and the amount of bandwidth that's available is quite finite. So this would work today. In tomorrow's environment, where expectations may be higher for bandwidth, we may have to migrate to other technologies. So something to keep in mind, we should be able to meet the requirements of today's definition of high-speed internet. Tomorrow you may have to migrate to different radio technology and or supplement with fiber technology.
John, I've got a quick question. Back to the towers. You mentioned you need one in Belmont to the tune of
Yes.
$1 million. What, would the water tower work?
The water tower could work. As a matter of fact, we did model based on the height of the water tower. So if there are existing facilities that we could leverage, that would certainly help.
Would you expect there to be resistance, like, you know, the municipality has to protect their asset? Would this be compatible in your opinion?
I wouldn't expect that this would have any negative impact on the asset itself. We'd have to have a better look, and Keith, maybe you'd be able to comment on whether this would open you up to having to provide tower infrastructure for every other service provider around.
Yeah, certainly I'll say the answer comes in two forms. One is technically is the tower suitable and feasible to have an antenna mount? Certainly with many other municipalities across North America, we find generally the answer is yes, but we don't know the specifics of the water tower. From a public policy perspective, you would likely need to develop some policies around if the model plays out as a private sector operator attaching assets to the tower, you would want to have the policy and business operations processes worked through, both in terms of access to the structure, as well as necessary insurance and requirements around that, but also the commercial arrangement to make sure that you're charging market rates for that sort of attachment, and allow that service to be open to any ISP that may approach you with the same request.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question, if I may.
Certainly.
I think going back to slide 8, maybe. I just wanted to clarify my understanding of the third column. Unserved premise count on serving fiber path. What does that
Certainly.
mean?
So again, the basis of this design is putting radio equipment on towers to serve all the area households. In order to connect to that radio equipment, we're proposing running fiber from a served area to the tower. Any currently unserved households along that fiber path could then be connected to the internet via fiber. So this unserved premise count along the serving fiber path is identifying those houses that would be on the fiber path that are currently in an unserved area.
Okay,
Does that answer your
that's
question?
what I thought, but I wasn't sure, so wanted to clarify. So then 2 slides later,
Yes.
so the cost would be either or. So someone who connects to fiber would be $1,000 for that premise. And if not picked up by fiber, it would be $500.
It would be 500. That's correct.
So it's either or. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Duncan, question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. These towers that you speak of, my understanding that these are owned by a third party,
Yes, that's correct.
and you're assured that this third party is going to be a willing host for us to put equipment on these towers?
So these towers are typically owned. I'm not sure if we identified the owners in the list of towers earlier in the presentation.
It's
But
not
they're
in the presentation, but it is in the
Okay.
report, John.
They're typically owned by the Bells and Rogers of the world. So the large cellular service providers, and these were effectively on cellular towers. Now, with CRTC regulation, they are forced to share their assets for other wireless service providers, as long as it's technically feasible. So there is a risk that they may not be able to provide you with lease space on those towers. There are other towers in the areas that could be chosen in that case, or the county could determine that they want to build their own tower in the same area. And if that comes to fruition, then building your own tower would come at a cost of roughly $255,000 per tower. So these details would be ironed out typically during the detailed design phase, when the RF designer would go through and validate coverage, connect in with the tower owners, and verify availability of space on those towers.
So just in my own mind, these existing cell towers with the major carriers on it, can they not make a business case of through their own respective businesses putting Wi-Fi or connectivity off of those towers, or do they already provide that service? Because if they do, again, that's not covering the area that is under service, and will anything that we were to put on there improve that?
Right. So good question. I think because these are primarily cellular towers, they're used for cellular service, not necessarily used for fixed wireless internet access or broadband access. So we could go in and put on wire or radio equipment for fixed wireless broadband deployment. And the coverage maps that we ran from those particular towers show that we can achieve full coverage or very close to full coverage of the entire county from those locations. So I feel assured that if we can get access to those towers through leasing agreements with those service providers, then we can provide coverage. Should those service providers decide to make their own business case to put that type of technology on and deliver the service, then I'd suggest the county has still met the goals of delivering service to those underserved areas. Right, just through influencing and pressuring, if you will, the larger carriers to provide this the coverage.
Jeff?
Just for clarification on that, John. So what you're saying is those towers typically are used for cellular service. So that does not mean that they have fiber run to those locations to provide high-speed internet. Is that what you're saying?
That's a good point. And yes, they may or may not already have fiber running to those towers. They likely don't, but there is a possibility that they do. In the case where they don't have fiber running to them for backhaul, the opportunity may be there for the county to monetize the fiber that it would put in and lease additional strands or spare strands to those service providers to provide them with a fiber backhaul facility from the tower.
John, if I was to say that if someone had a water tower, it could be a revenue source for the municipality, plus supply some needed coverage? Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement, I believe, yes.
Which would take you'd think takes the resistance away from people wanting to use it.
It very well may. Now, the water towers are typically, if I recall correctly, typically in around 100 to 120 feet in height, 32 to 40 meters, somewhere in that range in height. Some of these cellular towers were ranging from, I believe, 45 meters to 80 meters in height. So if we were to look at the water tower infrastructure, one would want to run additional coverage predictions based on the specifics of each of those towers. And again, validate coverage across the county.
Thank you. Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. I think you said that the owner of the tower is obligated to share the infrastructure unless not technically possible.
Yes.
Who gets to determine if it's technically possible?
So unfortunately, it's typically the owner of the tower that determines whether it's technically possible. And
And no one is charged to validate that.
Yeah,
Typically
there's,
not.
I mean, normally we look towards more of the, I'll say, if there's some debate or dispute, it's normally based around a civil engineering analysis of can the tower support the additional weight and wind loading that's proposed by the antenna. So there needs to be some very valid technical reasons rather than just trying to deny it for, I'll say, business or competitive reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Duncan,
Just wondering, through your research, have you run across a county that's working towards expanding its broadband? Have you run across an example where working with the large carriers, Bell, Rogers, TELUS, that there's been a successful agreement with the county having access to those towers to put equipment up on them?
I can comment that we certainly work with many municipalities across the country in terms of helping advance their broadband strategy and deployments. The tower co-location, it's called co-location is the actual process. The tower co-location process is quite well defined. And there's an application process and some engineering assessment costs to it. But generally within the industry, these towers are, the intention of Industry Canada is to make sure that these towers are fully utilized. As you can all appreciate, there's normally a degree of public resistance to constructing the tower in the first place. So carriers are committed through their initial permit applications to make co-location available such that we don't have the scenario of towers being constructed almost beside each other because the industry won't share capacity. The question as to whether the larger carriers will invest in, I'll say, fixed wireless to improve rural connectivity. I would say generally the large carriers are of the mindset right now that if and when their 5G programs will roll out, that 5G will provide an improved level of service in terms of rural connectivity. There's, I'll say, and it will certainly do that when it rolls out. The challenge, of course, is affordability, that home and consumer internet services, consumers want to enjoy many of the high broadband services available, movie streaming, online gaming, things like that, and generally want unlimited capacity, not capacity capped services like most cellular plans offer. So, providing a home service that has monthly capacity limits on it isn't an acceptable or feasible option to solve the rural and consumer broadband challenges that you have.
Mike, question.
Yeah, Keith and John, your propagation maps, I'm assuming this is line of sight technology. Was there any consideration given for tree cover, et cetera, within the unserved premises that actually substantiates your penetration maps or
Yes,
your propagation maps?
Yeah, that's a very good question and typically a concern as well. The tool that we used was a tool called Radio Mobile, and it does contain a rural clutter layer on top of the terrain. So it does account for foliage. In urban areas, the tool doesn't have a good clutter coverage for buildings and whatnot, but in rural areas, it seems to be relatively close. So it should provide a relatively close coverage map. And one of the next steps would be to verify coverage, to go out and put a transmitter source up on top of one of these towers and then go out and sample the coverage of that tower to verify the modeling.
Okay. And just a follow-up question to that. You're also predicating this on being able to connect to, you mentioned actually a backup. You're indicating the fiber interconnection would be from a served area to these tower locations. We know there's multiple providers across the county that have those served areas as part of their fiber infrastructure. So again, this is predicated on those carriers actually either one having capacity to provide to the county or whoever might operate such a system and the willingness to do that. So I'm not sure whether any work was done in that regard or not.
There wasn't any outreach to the service provider mainly to verify that.
Yeah,
But
so I think
Premature. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to comment, and perhaps you're going to say the same thing, that in order to fully explore this option and do further diligence, it would be, the next step would be to do an outreach to the service providers, understand what wholesale backhaul offerings they have and at which locations they would prefer to interconnect. That would be the next stage down the path to further explore this option.
Right. And I know it's a little premature, but I do know in more than one instance where fiber is existing in those communities, but capacity isn't robust. They're typically were underbuilt many years ago, and the east end of the county, especially, I know that's fact. A very small count fiber cable serving some of these areas, and the cost maybe even prohibitive to take this too much farther. But again, I know
Right.
that's pretty
Yeah,
preliminary for that.
it's a very good comment. And what I would suggest is the two options presented here represent the ends of the spectrum, both in terms of functionality and cost. The natural point for the strategy is likely somewhere in the middle of these two ends of the spectrum. You may find that you need to implement more fiber because of the lack of backhaul options in the served areas, and that would further inform your design to try and route that additional fiber through more underserved areas, such that you're connecting more premises directly with fiber. So certainly both of these options are at a very preliminary stage in terms of development, but give us some bookends to consider both in terms of cost and functionality.
And I think if we move down 2 slides to slide 12, that compares the two summaries, or it compares the two options.
Right.
So certainly a significant difference, and as Keith mentioned, we view these as the two bookends. And the ultimate solution may be to start with fixed wireless and migrate towards running fiber.
Perfect. Thank you, John. That's really gives us the ends of the spectrum to consider. There's also sort of overlays on each of these approaches, which include progressing towards a longer term vision of more fiber within the county through such policy considerations. I referenced the dig once approach, and there's already been a report on that matter to this committee, with a slightly different title but the same intent, called conduit and road allowances. The one final thought that I'll leave you with is, certainly many municipalities are trying to solve this problem and looking for other levels of government for assistance through grants, as well as exploring options with private investors. Certainly most grant programs and almost all private investors are biased towards putting money towards fiber infrastructure versus wireless infrastructure. So certainly there's a consideration there from access to funds from other parties in terms of how to finance and roll out any strategy that's selected. I'll keep, that concludes the discussion of the technical options. We're happy to revisit that should other questions arise, but in the interest of time, I'll move through the discussion of grant funding options. This discussion starts with a program that the industry doesn't have a lot of information on yet, and it's a program that was recently launched called Ontario Connects. This is a program that is just in its early weeks of being rolled out. There's not a lot of public information yet. We understand the Ontario government through press releases has committed $4 billion to the program through what's known as a reverse auction subsidy process. So what that means is basically it's a process where areas of premises and land would be essentially put up for auction, subsidy auction, in terms of each ISP proposing the amount of subsidy that they would need to support constructing, improving broadband in that particular area of land. This is a process that was rolled out on a large scale in the US market, the reverse auction process. It is certainly a process that is somewhat tilted towards larger ISPs with existing investments because they require less of a subsidy. Again, we don't know a lot of the details about this program or the timeline and process to participate, but it is a program that is certainly I'll say has altered the landscape within the Ontario environment for grant funding and understanding how that will roll out. The second program that I'll talk about are two programs that have been in existence for some time, both the ICON program and the UBF program. If you follow the broadband press releases, I'm certainly a broadband nerd and follow them all. There was a flurry of press releases announced during the first week of August in Ontario that announced large amounts of funding for various different geographies within Ontario. Understanding the context now, these were driven largely by getting these announcements out pre the federal election call. In speaking with the administrators at ISED, they are still in the process of working through the details of many of these awards that have now been publicly announced. And we're still digesting it all ourselves. But this program is typically eligible to both ISPs and municipalities that are going to invest in ISP infrastructure, and typically will fund somewhere in the range of 50 to 75% of the infrastructure investment costs, with matching funds being either provided by the municipality or the ISP. So that program certainly is an important component for most municipalities when considering their approach to dealing with the broadband infrastructure challenges that they have. Broadband now is starting to become an area where there are multiple doors and funding channels to consider. The Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program is one of those. It's a program that broadly funds infrastructure in communities across Canada under a subsidy or matching program. Broadband was recently added as an eligible infrastructure to this program, in addition to some of the more traditional infrastructure that we all know, roads, bridges, community facilities, etc. So that is another option to consider in terms of grant funding options. Lastly, the end of the spectrum is around involving private equity and the Canada Infrastructure Bank. So we are seeing private equity investors coming into the market now to invest in broadband systems, primarily fiber systems. These have large institutional investor backing behind them, so pension funds, etc. They're looking to make long-term investments, 20 or 30-year investments, and a stable cash flow or flow of return is what they're looking for. They are looking to get involved in larger projects. So typically the minimum project size to get engaged on these types of initiatives is around 50 million. Typical projects are normally range in the 200 million size or larger. I'll move to the next slide. So there's a number of approaches that municipalities can consider just in terms of the governance and the funding options. And really, these represent ends of the spectrum or different levers to pull, if you can think of it that way, in order to improve broadband within communities. So certainly on the left-hand side, there's a county-owned approach, which involves funding or partially funding the investment directly by the municipality, and looking for grant programs to help offset your investment, and contract arrangements with operators, usually private ISPs, to operate the network and maintain the network on your behalf and to deliver to the service standards that you establish. Many of these approaches are anchored in an approach to provide long-term connectivity to other public sector organizations within the municipality, schools, hospitals, municipal sites, sites that will be perpetually in the same location and perpetually operated by the public sector entity. Another approach that is similar to the county-owned is a P3 approach, where you solicit for a private sector partner, a co-investor, if you like, to execute on that same strategy. That investor partner normally will look to be involved in the operations, and the connectivity to other public sector organizations is usually a key feature, an anchoring feature of that approach as well. In the middle of the page, we have the direct subsidy approach. So this approach is very similar to the SWIFT program that is currently being executed on, and is actually very similar to the Ontario Connects program that the Ontario government just announced. So it is more of a direct subsidy program to targeted geographical areas, and long contracts for long-term operations are issued to the private ISPs. An approach that doesn't require direct municipal investment is one that we've labeled facilitate private sector. So this approach, which is a normal best practice, involves one of advocating, facilitating and advocating private ISPs to make private investments, identifying tactics to reduce the administrative barriers that are under the county control to allow them to make that investment, planning, permitting, access to buildings or structures under county control are an important aspect of that. The third aspect of this is also a coordinated procurement strategy across the public sector within the county, really to coordinate money that you're spending already on connectivity services, likely with the larger carriers, to give you some leverage in the negotiation discussion to encourage the chosen private sector connectivity provider to invest more in underserved areas on their own dime, but guided by the procurement contracts that they want to have with you for long-term connectivity arrangements to public institutions. Lastly, and somewhat for completeness, is a status quo approach, where the county essentially takes a passive role. Certainly there's and allows the private sector market forces and other levels of government to be involved in solutions. So these options are presented in terms of a spectrum of options. Some of them require direct county funding, others don't, but require efforts to coordinate, facilitate, and manage procurements. So it's really provides you somewhat of the variety of levers and strategies to consider executing upon. I'll advance us one more slide, and I'm sure we'll probably have some good questions and discussions. So certainly, if we were to summarize some of these options, the two on the left allow for direct control of investment. Being an investor means you are taking some cost and operational risks, and it does require some municipal capital to be allocated. On the right-hand side of the spectrum, so the right-hand top three lanes, lower or almost no capital costs and operational risks. The corresponding con, of course, is the lack of control of the investment and the timeline in order to make change happen. I think there's one more slide if my memory is correct. So in terms of the discussion of pros and cons, I won't read every box back to you, but certainly there's some options here to explore. Both the fiber backbone and wireless approach in a county-owned scenario. Combine that with the possibility of looking for a private sector partner that would also be an investor and an operator. Certainly the direct subsidy approach under both the SWIFT program, which started to gain momentum last year and is starting to execute on projects, and we really don't know enough about the Ontario Connects program to provide a comment at this time, but certainly keeping a very close eye on it. Certainly facilitating private sector, in my opinion, these are sort of good best practice things that don't cost a lot and should be executed on regardless of what you do in the other domains. I think they're important ways to take action as municipal leaders. Status quo, I've grayed out that box. I think by the very nature of a connectivity committee being in existence and us having this discussion, I think you're beyond that stage in your development and approach to the connectivity challenges within the county. One more slide, I believe. So as Jeff mentioned when we started this discussion, certainly we realize you're just beginning to digest this information. So there's the opportunity for discussion, for feedback and clarification, and looking forward to work with you to start to bring some of these options to more pointed recommendations and deliver that in a final report and presentation. This is the last slide, I promise, and we can pause for questions.
Thank you, Keith. Open the floor for questions, comments. We have one more slide? Duncan, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. I guess through you to Keith, as you had mentioned, you're interested in all things broadband. Just wondering, throughout the industry, is Starlink gaining any traction in their initiative, or is it something that's floundering along, or is it something that's that as we move forward is going to maybe change the way that communications are handled across a lot of our area?
Yeah, it's a great question. We certainly get a lot of questions about Starlink, and I'm involved with another municipality actually in a Starlink trial. to really start to assess what the service offerings are, and pricing, connectivity, etc. Governments are also investing a lot in the Canadian version of Starlink, which is Telesat. Telesat is not so much an option, I'll say, for southern Canada. And when I say southern Canada, that's south of the Arctic Circle. It's really targeted as a technology approach for northern Canada. So I kind of set that aside unless we're talking about very, very remote locations. Starlink has the potential, I believe, to probably be the right solution for, I'll say, the most 5% of your highest cost locations that are very expensive to provide fiber-based or fixed wireless connectivity to. I do think it will have a role to play. It's early days in the technology development, and certainly Starlink is not focused on the Canadian market per se. It's a happy accident that they have good coverage in Canada with their global deployment, but they are focused on their most lucrative markets, which are markets in the US as well as overseas markets. I think it will be a very good solution for those that in fact, I believe Elon Musk actually marketed it this way as a better than nothing service. But in terms of those who want to enjoy the rich fiber-based services, unlimited capacity, low latency, lower cost services, eventually it's probably not the long-term answer, other than the most expensive and hardest to get to, 5% of areas within your municipality.
What time frame do you see that it has a potential of gaining more traction in our market here? And is it something that when you're looking at the tremendous cost of trying to run fiber down low density roads, is it more feasible for us to assist residents with the initial setup cost to hook up to Starlink, and again, I like anything, the more it gains traction, I see their prices will come down the more subscribers they have. So is this something that we need to keep in the back of our minds as a committee moving forward before we commit any large amount of monies to any one direction?
Fair question. I certainly, the Starlink is in market trials in many markets already. In fact, in many municipalities, it's something that is an option for residents to order right now on a trial basis. It is in a market stage as well, where it's the actual costs of delivering the service are heavily subsidized, and in fact, I believe the one-time equipment cost for their current market trial is about $600 or $700 Canadian. The actual cost of that equipment being deployed is more in the order of $5,000. So there's a bit of an introductory pricing going on with the market trial from the provider. So I would expect over time that they would want to recover their hardware costs for each subscriber. So I would expect prices to creep up over time, or there to be longer, financing equipment layer on the service price when it does reach, I'll say, general availability in markets. It also is exclusively a residential service. It is not targeted towards business users or I'll say enterprise users that may need that connectivity. The service offering is exclusively targeted towards residential services. Time frame, it's in market right now. It is available. It's receiving, I'll say, limited penetration rates. But I would expect, much like the evolution of of technology that anyone with a fiber-based, it's not attractive to anyone with a fiber-based or even a fixed wireless-based service. The price performance is not there compared to those options. The cost of running fiber down many rural roads in the county is not small, certainly. Over time, I think those costs will come down as well as there if there's some programs of scale. And much like the electrification of rural areas, it didn't happen everywhere at once. But now it's tough to imagine having a property without electricity service. And I think over time, fiber-based broadband will end up in that state, given the current direction from both the Ontario provincial government and the federal government.
Further comments? Dominique?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so still digesting the options, and I think all along from this committee, I think the goal is we want to be proactive and not passive and sort of at the mercy of different grants and the choice of different ISPs to decide where to invest, how much, and when. So when I use that criteria as part of our strategy, then it pushes me into the P3 approach. But so I'm almost thinking similar to how you have a hybrid solution for fiber and wireless. Is there also a hybrid funding option where we could consider, perhaps where there's a more likelihood of investment, more of the direct subsidy approach, and then leave the really hard to reach areas and just be jump into more of the P3 or even county owned approach? So is that even a possibility?
It is definitely. I've seen many municipalities, in fact, go through procurements to select a P3 partner. In my opinion, the trick in making those projects sustainable long term is grabbing up a very broad basket of both the worst areas, the highest cost areas to serve, as well as some areas that are pretty attractive to serve from a commercial business case point of view. That way, you end up with a P3 partner that acknowledges they need to take some of the worst with some of the best, and not just leave the worst for the public sector to fund on their own. But yes, it is very much a spectrum of negotiation and options with a P3 partner or an investor to determine how much they're willing to put in versus the county's investment.
And so as a follow-up then, can you expand a little bit on the operational risk for the county in a P3 approach?
Mm-hmm. So, the operational risk is really twofold. One is you want to make sure that you do your due diligence in selecting a partner, that they're a capable operator and can deliver good service. It's very important to have a very good service relationship, of course, with the subscribers. The other major operational risk is just their ability to execute on rolling out the network and signing up subscribers. Most of these business plans will rely on achieving penetration rates of at least 60% or better. The more subscribers you get, the better the business case. So they have to come forward with a very well thought out plan to both build efficiently and connect and sign up subscribers as they go in order to generate the revenue to subsidize the cost of the network.
Further questions? Cecil, welcome.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Keith. I'm looking at your report, and I just had a couple questions. One, at this point, have you gathered all the internet service provider data that's possibly available? that you're aware of in terms of coverage, speeds, etc.?
I believe we have. There's one overlay of data which will come from the county, a recent survey process that the county has initiated. So we have yet to incorporate that data in our information in terms of actual speed test results from a recent survey. But in terms of the public information that's available within the public domain and made available by ISPs, I believe we have a fairly comprehensive picture of that.
If I may, through the chair again, the reason I asked that question specifically is I see you reference a lot of, like you said, public information, I said information, etc. In the wireless map data I provided your company, there were other ISPs listed like Juice, Uplink Wireless, Velox Wireless. And I know they don't have ISED data, but I don't see any of their coverage, their speeds, or any of that accommodated or accounted for in your analysis. So I didn't know if it was just a case that they didn't respond to your request or if it was just a timing issue.
So in terms of the publicly available information, I can certainly double check in terms of any data that we're missing. The focus was on infrastructure and areas served or not served with 5010 service. So these especially the smaller wireless companies are executing on their plans and rolling out their networks. But we'll certainly endeavor to ensure that we've incorporated all the data that's been made available to us.
Okay, and again, I'm not to try to, I guess, labor the point, but it's not just smaller companies that seem to be missing. I know you have ExecuLink listed, but I don't really see a speed coverage there. And that's a much larger company with a much larger footprint, fiber and such, not necessarily in Elgin, but definitely wireless coverage. So I just wanted to make sure we had a complete picture. And based on what you're telling me, it sounds like we're close, but we are missing a few pieces.
Yeah, we have summarized some of that data at I'll say a technology layer, not a service provider layer, in terms of the broad footprint within the county. So I have a feeling some of the data might be there, but not explicitly shown by individual service provider.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Further comments? I've not seen any. You gonna do a wrap up, Jeff, or are you ready?
Another presentation. So much of what's going to be on this very small PowerPoint presentation is what we've been discussing right now. Next steps for the committee and what the committee would like staff to gather more information on. That's kind of what we're trying to establish now. Based on what Keith has laid out, as he's indicated, these are kind of bookends with regards to options. We need to understand what direction the committee would want more information on so that staff can work with IBI. We can reach out to ISPs, anything like that, to gather more information for any of these technical options. So I kind of put it out to the committee. Is there a direction you would prefer to get more information on? Or do we need more time to digest the report and the presentation?
Duncan?
Well, as presented today, I think a lot of the proposals are based on the ease that are not so easy having opportunity to use third-party towers for use in connecting Elgin County. So at some point in time, I think that someone had better reach out to those larger organizations, being Bell or Rogers or Telus or whoever they might be, and see if there's a willingness even to discuss these issues My gut tells me you won't even get a phone call back, but certainly maybe somebody will prove me wrong. But certainly, I think we need to have a good understanding of that before any of that proposal is valid at all.
Okay, we can definitely take care of that. Yep.
I guess that's a good point. If everyone says, no, you can't use our tower,
Wow.
it stops real quick.
Or how many hurdles and roadblocks and studies and engineering studies and all the things that get thrown in the way that yeah, you can use the tower, but we'll make it as difficult as we can for you to be able to do that.
No, it's a fair comment. There are certainly many more physical tower options to consider. We boiled it up to what we felt were the best options, the best towers with the best reach. But we can certainly, initially gather additional information on the co-location process and as well as other existing tower infrastructure that would be suitable in the nearby vicinity to execute on a slightly altered version of the concept that was displayed.
Well, I know in my municipality here, Keith, that Bell has upgraded some towers, and there are certain residents that have benefited from the fact that they now receive a much better broadband signal off of those towers, but again, it's fairly limited in its reach.
Right, understood.
Dominique,
Through you, Mr. Chair, did you say, or do you know when to expect more details on the Ontario Connects program?
Yeah, good question. We've been asking, as within the consultant industry for additional information. We understand that information has been shared with the larger ISPs under strict non-disclosure provisions. So we're expecting information to either find its way out formally or sort of make its way into the marketplace. But I would suspect, given a current federal election call and the flurry of announcements, that we're probably looking at late September before any other information is officially released on it.
Because I know it's sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I know it's probably not possible to estimate, but for me, it's almost like, so we know what the ideal solution is, and fiber to every home, and we know the price tag. And I'm trying to assess what is the most we think might be possible to receive in terms of funding, and assuming there's some stacking that's allowed between federal programs and provincial programs. And it's almost, I would like to be able to work backwards from, like, this is this is what we're most likely to get. This is the maximum based on where we are and the economic activity and the density of population, and whatever criteria is being used. And then we would say, okay, so well, based on that, let's see what's the best solution and best funding solution option. But
Brian's got a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Through you to Councillor Giguère. Staff are happy to bring back a report that further details those funding programs and how those mechanics may work, if that's of interest to the committee.
Yeah, I think that would be of interest to me to understand, how they work and what we're likely to get.
Seeing some heads nod yes, I think that's a good idea. The politician in me is thinking that I believe the provincial elections in June, this coming June, so we've had federal announcements leading up to this election. I imagine we'll be seen some soon from them as well. So, Cecil, did I see your hand up?
You did, thank you, Chair. Similar to the tower co-location options and availability, It'd be interesting to know any transit fiber that might be going through these areas. I know you said you can pull fiber from different locations, but is there actual capacity? Mike Andrews alluded to that there was some issues in the east. I know there's been some issues in the west. I would like to see any identified potential points of presence and or transit fiber. That might be another thing that can be looked at to help facilitate, to extend what is already out there to, you alluded to it in your report, but I just wanted to make sure that what is available to us, and can that be used to detail this plan that you're going to bring forward in the future.
All right.
Okay, just one more slide. So the next slide, I think we've already touched on. It's regarding financing options, and Councillor Giguere made a very good point. I think we can, Brian indicated we can return with a report outlining these financing options, and I think that's a really good idea to maybe work backwards based on what might be available to us to reach our desired goals. So that's it.
Any questions for Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I'm also wondering, the results of the survey that just closed recently, is there anything in there that would influence also our thinking around these funding options or solutions?
Go ahead.
Sorry. So yes, we're going to use the survey. So we do have the survey data. We've scrubbed that data. It's taken us a little bit of time because we needed to work through cleaning up some addressing issues. So as Keith alluded to earlier, we are going to map that. And then we will scrub the personal data out and provide that data to the committee for review as well. But absolutely, there's a lot of good content in there that will help us determine where to focus and where to start, those sort of things. So yes.
Okay, great.
Duncan?
Just for curiosity, Jeff, do you have the percentage of response to that survey?
It's higher than the initial survey.
We got 2% yet?
We don't know what the percentage is. We know it was just short of 500 respondents, I believe. 400, sorry.
462.
Sorry, 462 respondents is what we received.
Well, that's impressive.
So slightly more than the October survey. I'm not sure if it's 2% though.
Further comments? All right, I think we've had a good discussion. Are we finished? We're going to go back and do some reflection. Get a staff report. Yeah, there's a lot to digest, but some good information. We are moving ahead, I believe. If there's nothing further there, we'll move to correspondence. And I don't think we have any, do we, Jenna? Catherine, no, I'm seeing no, hearing no. Do we have any new business? Not seeing any. Would you like to pick a date for our next meeting? Any suggestions? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'd like to suggest perhaps September 9th.
Can we just check our calendars? See how many are available? Hopefully we are.
Also meeting that day, aren't you?
What time?
2 p.m.
I've got a Board of Health meeting at 3.
1 o'clock.
That would work for me. Does it work for the rest of us? September 9, 1 o'clock. Is that what we said, 1 o'clock?
Yeah, 1 o'clock, yes.
All right. All right, one more chance. Any other correspondence or any other comments before we call for adjournment? I want to thank everyone for your attention and attendance today. We're gathering a lot of information. I think we're going the right direction, so. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Justin and Dominique, please call the vote.
Counselor Jiguer,
Yes.
Counselor McPhail,
Yes.
Mike Andrews,
Yes.
Justin Pennings,
Yes.
Mr. Warden,
Yes.
5-0, the motion is carried.
All right. Once again, thank you, everyone. Stay safe.